in the Civil Rights Division. That certainly didn't pan out. And, I was unemployed for 6 months, Barbara. I washed cars and bust tables just to bring in some money for those 6 months. If you believe that. Most humbling experience I've ever had. And I tell you, Barbara, I was awful at both. That was a great motivator for me to go get a legal job. True story. So I went to my first job in D.C. My first job in D.C. was on the city council at the Criminal Justice Committee with Wilhelmina Rolark. I'm sure you know her husband, Dr. Rolark, who ran the newspaper here. His daughter runs it now, and he was one of my biggest backers and supporters when I would do pro bono work representing young black men who were wrongfully stopped by the police or even arrested by the police in the schools. One really significant case I handled early on was, they had these school monitors calling these kids the N-word as part of their enforcement policy. We exposed that with the help of Dr. Rolark, and just really great work done early on in my career when racism was still ever present and still is present in our society. Newsflash, this is not a colorblind society. Newsflash, Mr. Trump, Dr. Trump, President Trump, right? We still got a lot of racism going on. Let's look at the social health and economic disparities between black folks and white folks, and you certainly reach a different conclusion. I hope you're listening, Judge Clarence Thomas, too. We still got a lot of racism going on.
Daryl, I know you want to bring the next question up. Go ahead, Daryl.
Oh, sure. Welcome back, Scott. Always great to have you on the show. You were speaking about your experiences in New York as a prosecutor. And I too, I'm a former prosecutor, started out as a prosecutor. Was there anything that happened as a prosecutor, as a black prosecutor in New York that has shaped your approach to dealing with voting rights, civil rights cases today?
Well, as I said, I was born into the race game. Early on with my parents and how I was raised, I was painfully aware of the difference between black folks and white folks, white privilege as well as white racism. I never saw it as a barrier. I saw it as something we had to overcome. And while I was a prosecutor in New York, I always wanted to believe that this imperfect union, that we were in search of a more perfect union under the Constitution, as you know, Daryl. And yet racism found its way into the courtroom on a regular basis. I mean, the majority of people making decisions about who got prosecuted at the senior levels of the New York State Prosecutor's Office were white, and the majority of the people we were prosecuting were black and brown. It's painfully evident that dichotomy or that line of demarcation was fundamentally wrong, and I fought early as a young prosecutor for more people of color to be hired as supervisors in senior management with Morgenthal's office. Even in the courtroom, though, Daryl, you work arraignments 12 to 9 a.m. in the morning in the 90s. It still is the case there. I remember standing on cases for new arrests where, they're setting bail, arraignments, as you know, and a young white defense lawyer had a client who was just assigned to him, and both young men were accused of what they used to call wolfpack robberies in New York. And as part of his defense, he looked at this tall young black man and said, "Judge, he's a tall, strapping young buck. How could he do this, and how could he be accused of this, that, and the other?" And as a prosecutor, I was outraged at that representation, demanded he retracted and apologize to it, demanding that the judge do or say something about it. And the judge, to his credit, corrected the defense lawyer, chastised him for it. But I knew Monday morning, because I had made such a big deal of it, I knew Monday morning I was going to be called into Morgenthal's office, senior management, over my conduct in court. And to my surprise, and I mean this, Daryl, the conversation wasn't about correcting me. The conversation really with his number 2 and number 3 was about them trying to understand why I was so incensed with that representation by that white criminal defense lawyer. And I kind of chuckled and said, if I got to explain this to you, y'all in the wrong business, because you in the black and brown business. You prosecuting these young people. You are representing witnesses, complaining witnesses in this city, and you think it's okay. They didn't see the racism, literally, in this white defense attorney calling his client a tall, strapping young buck. I said to them, what's next? Was it going to be okay for him to show the judge's teeth and raise his lip as if he was going to be on the selling block of the slave trade? Because it's right. That follows. That's going to follow if you let him call his client a young, strapping young buck. And so I was incensed by it. And so those circumstances, both of them, the defendant in court, as well as the lack of diversity and the lack of color at senior management, left a lasting impression on me.
Wow. That is so amazing to hear, Scott. Because
and that was in 1992. Or rather, no, that was in 1988, 89.
Wow.
This wasn't that long ago, y'all. I'm telling you.
And you did something Elaine Jones, former chief counsel at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, always talks about. You spoke up. Because a whole lot of folks, they are afraid of losing their good jobs, that they're quiet, and as she says, they sit around like lumps on a log, and they're in a position and won't use the position for justice. So thank you for that. When you spoke to our young people, doing one of our Gen Z and young millennial trainings, they were fascinated by you because you talked about the fact that even though you were at the height, you are at the height of the legal profession, being a managing partner at that time of one of the major law firms, international law firms, you still took time to come and meet with them super early on a Monday, on a morning, to, talk with them about their careers, their questions. They were just so moved by you. And I just want to, again, thank you. But for folks listening, what has it been like, being in a place where you can't even count the number of African-American managing partners, in this country on your hand, because it's such a rarity. What has it been like for you to be in what people would say high cotton, to be at the tip of the spear? What has it been like for you, sir?
I really enjoyed talking to the young people that day, and thank you for providing that forum for them and me. And several of them have called me after that program, just by the way, Barbara, and some still call me. I'm in touch with some of those young people as they matriculate through their legal careers. So really a phenomenal program. I think for me, in leadership, I understood early on the business of law and the business of big law. I'm the most unlikely senior partner at a major law firm in Washington than you'll ever find. I flunked contracts my first year of law school and took it a second time and amjured it, or got an A, got the highest score in the class. I failed the New York bar the first time and passed it the second time and made up something like 70 points. I run for office in D.C., and the voters decided they wanted me to go back to practicing law than being on the city council or the mayor's office. And so for me, my journey to excellence in big law has been about perseverance. and really a love of myself, as I told those young people. You got to love yourself first, and never delegate to anyone the power to define how you feel about yourself. Don't ever delegate that to someone else, because they'll have you caught up and strung out about how you not only feel about yourself, but your career. And succession comes. I tell people all the time, after every failure comes success for me, and after every success comes failure. It keeps me grounded in the Lord and keeps me grounded in myself. And so for me, being in big law, I understood that generating clients was key. I didn't want to work for anybody. I wanted to work with that law firm that had a lot of resources. And as a result, I worked with some incredible lawyers, black and white. In Washington, you work against some of the best lawyers in the world, and you work with some of the best lawyers in the world. And I've had an incredible experience for the last 34 years at Reed Smith, working with some really talented people who nurtured me. Could not have built a multi-million-dollar practice for 34 years straight without the help of my partners and the leadership of Reed Smith. And, the numbers, managing people that don't look like you is no different than managing people that do look like you or a diverse group. It does not matter, because the common denominator is the human condition and humanity, and treating people fairly and finding out what makes them tick, what gets them motivated to be high performers. And I demonstrate that myself by being a high performer and generating lots of clients for the firm, but also getting others to do that. I often say excellence has no color. It doesn't. There's one level of excellence. It's the only colorblind thing in the world. And so whether you black or white, excellence is going to manifest itself if you are. And as a manager and someone who served on the executive committee worldwide, pushing my colleagues to excellence, finding ways for them to be excellent and to perform, made the firm stronger and made me stronger, right? And so having a book of business really changed my experience in a large corporate law firm. I didn't have the struggles that so many associates do have or partners have, because I was blessed with the ability to not only try cases, but the gift of gab and the ability to sell. We're in the sales business now. Top 25 law firms in the world, they have great expertise. They can all solve your problem. So how do you get them to say yes to you? Well, you build relationships for sure. But more importantly, they have to like you in order to do business with you. And so if you're good at legal sales, because they presume you have legal excellence if you're a top 25 law firm. And so then now we're in the legal sales business. And I say this all the time to whatever audience it is. If you're not in the relationship building business, if you're not in the sales business, you don't need to be in the legal business. And so that's kind of been the stripes or the lines of demarcation that I've set up for myself and my colleagues, and it's been a winning formula for the last 30 plus years.
Wow. Thank you so much for that amazing background. I've learned a lot that I didn't know about you, and thank you for such honest sharing. Now, let's talk about...
There's a book in there, Barbara. I just got to find some time to write it.
I got you. That's going to be an amazing book when it comes out. I wanted everyone to hear your perspective on this so-called D.C. takeover. And we start the show talking about what has happened with the judge's ruling regarding Los Angeles, and holding that whole, military occupation was illegal, unconstitutional in essence. It's so that ruling just came out today, but it's a reminder of how this administration keeps overreaching, keeps making these errors. Yesterday was Labor Day, and there were 1,000, Daryl, and Just 1,000 Scott and Daryl protests all over the country. So people are still getting out there, going to the streets. What do you say about this D.C. takeover that all our listeners around the country need to know?
Well, listen, the district government partners with